Hello there and welcome back to this abridged campaign for 3K Total War playing as the Yellow Turbans with Gong. Last time we took out the main force under Ma Teng and went on to secure our starting area, the Wudu Commandery, stealing loads of Ma Teng's territory, and then we finished off Ma Teng's entire faction by moving into the neighbouring commandery as well, just to our northwest. We're going to start another strand to this campaign because I've put together this small army back in our starting area with some real trash troops. It's much smaller and worse than our original army, but I still think we can do something with it, so I'm going to try. And what I'm going to do specifically is sneak over the border into Jiang Lu's territory and switch our stance to this special liberate stance, which I presume is unique to the Yellow Turbans. We're just riling up the locals and trying to get a Yellow Turban rebellion going in this territory as well. We gain a load of supplies for doing this, and it's ruining the enemy's public order, and now we can just stand there. It's going to be up to the enemy to stop us, I suppose. We're also going to want to go out towards the rest of Jincheng Commandery, which we started capturing last time, since we are actually already at war with its commander Han Sui. I was so enthusiastic I forgot I didn't have any movement points that turn, so we'll wait until the next turn. But actually we see that Han Sui is moving towards us, and it's kind of exploity really, because I don't think we were supposed to know this. There's this little pop-up where it tells you your faction leader's opinion on other faction leaders, and it allows you to see where the faction leader is through the fog of war. So right now we've discovered that Han Sui just moved out of the small city of Jincheng, and effectively we're seeing the fact he was trying to attack us, so we can move out to stop him right now. He's not going to sneak by. And as a further bonus, he's in forced march stance. That means we might as well pile in right now, because he's going to have a penalty to the fatigue on his units. They're always going to be tired or something like that. And in records mode, it did say at the start of the campaign that stamina is particularly important. It doesn't actually tell you what it does, because it's not that kind of game, but it does something significant. Also, we can fight a night battle to give the enemy a morale penalty, meaning this will probably be easier than it looks. We've got a rare combination of weather for this battle. It's both a full moon, a night almost as bright as day, and it's cloudy enough to be raining at the same time. Hopefully that's auspicious, probably inauspicious, knowing the omens. Now, I got my first look at how the AI would play a defensive battle, and it's looking like some kind of improvements have been made. It's forming a crescent formation in response to the fact that I'm outflanking it on both sides. That's actually pretty good, although it is not only using cavalry as part of its front line in this crescent, it is letting me kill them with my horse archers, so that's two no-nos, but I think I wouldn't expect it to be so detailed as to know what to do in very context-specific situations where their unit balance isn't enough to defend against us and that sort of thing. So I am not going to be overly harsh on it. This is fine, really. Once we take out one unit of cav, they redistribute their army to try and maintain the defence on their left flank, but this does mean that they're giving us another target. Now we can shoot at this other cav unit instead. However, something changed at this point, and the enemy did decide to be more proactive in defending against my archer attack. They're going to use some of their foot archers to come over here and start firing back, so that's exactly what they should be doing. And in response, I'll do the correct response to that response. Move away! That way their foot archers won't damage our horse archers, and the battle just ends and we'll wait for another opportunity to do something. Meanwhile, our own archers have now formed up in front of our men to start bombarding the enemy position. My precious Yellow Turban archers are going to be doing all of that sweet damage, and because the enemy have their archers not in their front line, we're able to fire at the enemy with impunity. They don't quite have range on us. Their front line are all unshielded spearmen, mostly unarmoured as well, so they just walk towards us, and our archers will just absolutely annihilate them. One unit's taken out far before they reach our line. The other units, in the process of getting taken out, they're not taking it very seriously. They're not running at us or anything, so that's going to help us out a lot. And of course, our melee cavalry are now getting in position to rear attack the enemy army. As for our horse archers, I eventually just charged because we could take out the enemy foot archers in melee, and that solves that whole situation. And our main line's charging as well. All I wanted to do was lock the enemy down, really. We've got so many cav that once the enemy are fighting us, we'll be able to encircle them easily. And the start of the fighting also exposed all of the rest of the enemy's archers. They do have some decent cav of their own over here, but they just trotted along and got caught up by our armoured spearmen, so that's all fine. And really that's the battle won. They've still got some presence on the balance bar, but it's deceptive. All of their units are going to be killed very quickly from this situation, so we just have to wait. Here we are a little bit later. One of their generals goes down in that central melee, and everything else is routing all over the place, and we're just chasing them down and killing everything since we might as well. The battle will go on for a while though, because this is another case where they've got an unbreakable officer. It's their faction leader, Han Sui, in fact, in this case. He's unbreakable, and he is the Sentinel class, meaning he's just hard to kill in general. So we're going to have to wait a very long time for our spearmen to gradually grind their way through his little cav unit. The upside is that the Sentinel isn't very powerful, so they don't really kill us in return. A long time later, Han Sui will eventually go down. The AI doesn't know about withdrawing yet. That's still an improvement yet to be made. Although perhaps in its defense maybe you're not allowed to withdraw if you're attacked in the forced march stance, not quite sure. It says we got a close victory, which I would rate as very mean on the gamer's part. We lost something like 70 men, and the enemy lost about 1,000. I would say this was a resounding victory. Heroic, you could even say. It's so decisive that we've effectively won our war against Han Sui right there, just as things started. Han Sui himself, I think, is still alive. I'm still not sure how to interpret these results, because one officer's dead by the looks of things, but Han Sui is alive, and yet he's no longer leading the army. Some other guy has spawned, so maybe he's wounded or something and has just been taken out of the game temporarily. Whatever the case, we're actually not going to be seeing him again, so he's as good as dead for our purposes. Down in Hanzhong, Zhang Lu has reacted to us trying to liberate his people by bringing his army over, so it looks like he's probably going to attack us. His army looks quite a lot better than ours. It's trash, technically, the Imperial establishment version of trash, just spear and archer militia. But our trash is even worse because it's just peasants with no weapons and things like that. So we probably don't want to stand around and fight. But now that I know what Zhang Lu has and the size and type of his army, I can react to that by going back, getting loads more trash, and getting us to the point when our secondary army here under Zhu He is able to take down Zhang Lu and actually try to conquer him properly. Here's a little thing you have to take into account when recruiting a new officer. The officers in your pool like and hate each other, so you have to try and get people together who like each other, and I think it gives you a small buff if you do that. Probably not going to be talking much about that in this campaign, of course. As for Gong, I just want to press on towards Jincheng's small city. However, you can see here that advancing through winter uses up loads of supplies. We're going to use half of our previously full supply train just to move a short distance. Might even have been better to just encamp and then wait until spring before we moved, but I am impetuous as ever. At the start of the next turn, we've reached the next Enlightenment level, the thing that's like Imperium from the previous games, and this unlocks a few more features, including a thing that's like the Edict system from previous games, where you have a governor who gives some passive buff to a region. Here you can have more than one per commandery, so we're going to have a couple of guys doing various buffy things. Again, something I won't be talking about in this abridged commentary, but that's going on in the background, just so you know. Anyway, not much happened, and really we're skipping now to Gongdu arriving at Jincheng's small city. I was trying to look around the UI here to see, can I find out what garrison the city has? And you can, it's just that really small button in the bottom left. I think it should be a bit more prominent, since this matters quite a lot. It's really what you need to see when you click on a city, what army is defending it. Anyway, it wasn't gigantic or anything, so I felt happy to go on in. The issue we're going to have, though, is that this place is much more fortified than the places we've been attacking recently. They've got towers, they've got walls and gatehouses, etc. And we actually need to make siege equipment. So we're not just going to storm in like I originally thought. I'll start making a ram here. We don't have the supplies to do any sort of protracted siege. This isn't as much of an issue as I thought it was, because as I'm playing this in the campaign, I didn't know that you can attack places without siege equipment, because it's like in Warhammer, where your guys can just climb over the walls, or even Shogun 2 and Empire Napoleon, etc. So you can just storm the wall and go over. But in this case I did want to wait and make siege equipment since I didn't know that, and this also helps because it reduces the condition of the city, and things like gates and towers can start already destroyed if the city condition is lowered. Anyway, I'm actually out of supplies now, only by 1 point. If I had one more point of supplies I could wait another turn and go in with 2 rams, but I'm going to try it with just the one. Just before we start, this is a good time for me to mention a gripe with this game. You actually can't save here on the battle initiation screen like you used to be able to. Normally, in a situation like this, I would stop and go back to film battle replays before getting into this new battle project. But now you can only quick save, which is less reliable because of course a quick save can be overwritten by other quick saves. That means if a big battle comes along, you can't say, well, I'll do it tomorrow or something, which is quite annoying. You kind of have to keep going unless you want to rely on the quick save not being overwritten, which is fair if you're not playing any other campaigns or you don't intend to test anything out, etc., which wasn't the case for me, having just got the game. At least with siege attacks, you can choose to do them at any time in your turn, so as you saw, I just went and fiddled around with some other things for a bit and came back to do this battle another day, so let's get into it. I started off with the traditional exploit strategy of attacking both sides of the town at the same time. I thought the enemy might split their army half and half or something, but they have rather wisely put most of their infantry facing off where most of my infantry is, which is the right thing to do. So good AI, they're not going to be so easily exploited. Their archers are ready to fire by the looks of things, that must be hard on their arms, so I was hesitant about just advancing towards the gate with my ram and being shot to pieces by the archers. That's why I was happy to discover that you can just climb up the wall, so I sent some spearmen to go to a bit of the wall that wasn't defended and just climb up to see what we could do. I'm being helped out here by the fact that two of the towers nearby have already been destroyed by siege damage, so it's particularly easy to climb up this particular part of the wall. One tower is still firing at us, so it's time for us to find out how effective towers actually are against infantry. And the answer is pretty effective. They're better than in Attila, not only because of the damage they're doing, but infantry can't capture them like in previous games, so I can't go take out that tower using my spears like I thought I could, and I'm going to lose a whole load of the spears trying to do that before I find out it just can't be done. Although, this attack seems to have had some kind of positive effect for the battle because the enemy abandoned the gatehouse. Perhaps the AI knows it could be outflanked and decided to go to a secondary position. Meanwhile, the civilians in the town are on the way out. This is another Attila feature, having the civilians in sieges, and they're still just kind of weird. This one runs over and nopes out after realizing he probably shouldn't just charge our lines, so good for him. Anyway, we're making our attack since the gatehouse has been abandoned. They left behind only one unit of archers that was now just on the other side of the wall, but my own archers could easily shoot over their not particularly tall wall and take them out, so that was easy enough. Once that's done, we just need to open the gate. Even though the gate's open, we don't control it, and it closes once we get up to it. One ram destroys both the gate and my ram by the looks of things. That's another Attila feature that seems to have made it up here. And in we go, so we can now occupy the inside of the gatehouse and think about our next move. You can see the enemy have grouped up near some towers just further inside the city. Meanwhile, my spears have given up trying to take out that enemy tower after realizing that it doesn't work like that. And now we're just standing around trying to stay out of range of the tower, but they've now put themselves in range of the enemy's normal archer, so it's just not going well for them. I guess they've already done the damage they need to do because we're in the town now, in the city. An issue we're having though is that some of our archers decided to climb the wall rather than going through the gate when I ordered them inside. This means they can't fire, but the solution to this is to order your men to halt and then fire at will again. Can't really show this in the replay of course, but it allows units to fire even while part of the unit is also moving somewhere, and in this case, since most of the units are already in position ready to fire, we're getting our shots off much earlier than we would have otherwise been doing, and we can just rain arrows on this blob of enemy troops. The enemy reacts to this correctly by not just standing there. They are going to come and attack us, but the archers left behind here will not stand a chance against my own archers, who, as I said, are the magic yellow turban archers who just shoot really fast and take guys out by the bucket load. They run out of ammo pretty fast, but they've done their job as well. Some cav charge in, but they attack our spearmen, so we'll have an okay time fighting against them once the charge bonus has worn off. But they also have these infantrymen who have big shields and are potentially better than ours, so that's a bit more of a threat. At least they don't have very many of them. That means we can quite easily just sneak around the other streets and get some encirclements going. I also brought over the horse archers who had been with Jiang Hu on the other side of the map doing nothing, so they could come in through the opened gate and give us some more arrows to use against the enemy. And here we can see me just doing the encirclement, didn't even need to bother finishing it because the enemy routed. We are in a night battle again, remember, so they're getting a big morale debuff. Here was an annoying case where I thought my men could really do with being more aggressive. The enemy did the worst possible thing. They routed into our formation, and I thought, oh, surely we'll just slaughter them all instantly, but it's just not happening at the speed I would expect. I think the game is very generous with routing units being able to escape. Probably done for balancing reasons, I would imagine, but it does look a bit goofy if you pay too much attention to it in battles, like in a battle replay. Anyway, everything else that the enemy had just routed, so we didn't have to fight any more than that. And that's a decisive victory. We've taken our first city with not that many casualties actually. I expected it to be quite brutal since we didn't have the equipment, but somehow the spears climbing the wall did the work for us. I'm going to occupy this place, and as I do, we get this message saying that our other peoples are very much interested in moving here. Apparently this is prime real estate and I can help them move if I like. This means more population will be here instead of somewhere else, and I can't replenish or something because we're busy moving people about. You get these little dilemma things for various different reasons all the time in this game actually, perhaps once every turn or two, much more than in previous games I'll anecdotally state. Again, I'm not talking about them very much in this abridged commentary, but you do have to make lots of various contextual decisions. I think the paradox influence has seeped into Creative Assembly here. At the start of the next turn, we got a cutscene. This cutscene has been triggered by presumably a sort of forced historical path that the campaign takes. So if we just don't touch the other factions, historical things happen to them. And in this case, Lu Bu has assassinated Dong Zhuo, the leader of the tyrannical faction that was controlling the Emperor before. So that just means if we want to take control of the Emperor, we have to kill someone else instead. That's the only thing we need to know about this. Now I'm back at it again with Jiang Lu, but now with more trash. We'll see what he does this time when I try to liberate his people. Meanwhile for Gong Du, just need to finish up some business in the Jincheng small city because Han Sui has a few men hanging around. I guess this is his son or something. We can easily just auto-resolve them to death, and Gong Du absolutely annihilates that guy. I do like the campaign map animations for those fights. In the aftermath, I'm going to go for the option to get some supplies, because we are actually low on supplies after that dangerous winter march I did. But again, it's strange that you can take the supplies, but you can't also recruit. I'm not quite sure why the options there need to be mutually exclusive. I guess that's just how it is. And now I'm going to be a bit more responsible about the whole winter marching thing by staying in the city during the next winter. That way we gather up our supplies and indeed gather up troops because our army isn't at full strength, and we won't just march out to be super hyper aggressive like we were being before. We wait until the snow is gone and then we'll march out, with our objective now being the other Han Sui territory to take the rest of Jincheng. And because Gong Du has several campaign movement range upgrades, he can actually get most of the way there in just a single turn. Now back down to Shu He and our situation with Jiang Lu. This time Jiang Lu didn't come out to stop me liberating the people, and I got bored of waiting for something to happen, so I instead set an ambush quite close to his town to see if we can get anything going with that. Then Gong Du arrives at his destination. There is a non-negligible army here, so it's only a balanced situation. They've got some decent units in the garrison, and a couple of officers with a ton of generic militia units, giving them a decent number of troops. I think what I should have done here was just attack right away using a night attack to debuff the enemy, but for some reason I decided to try and siege them out, but they just sallied in the first turn, so we ended up fighting them anyway with a very similar battle, only we can't use night attack so they won't be debuffed. Although that said, we are now the defenders, which is quite nice. And I think silk traders do have towers defending them if you attack them, so we're going to avoid any hassle from that by just fighting a normal battle. I say normal battle, for some reason I've got this square, and it's saying I should go in here to escape an ambush or something. I'm not quite sure that was meant to be there, but if we do get ambushed, I guess we'll go to the square. Anyway, as for our plan, we're just going to stand around on a ridge and wait for the enemy to arrive, while my cav, my horse archers specifically, go out to annoy the enemy. And we're doing the same strategy I highlighted in the previous part, where you have the horse archers spread out so that the enemy doesn't pay any attention to them, and then just snipe away at the odd unit that gets tempted to go over and take a look. Here it's a couple of units of axemen. They've got shields, they're probably somewhat resistant to arrow fire, and they are using loose formation because they've got a nearby strategist that enables unit abilities like that, I think, anyway. The thing was, I sent in my melee cav to go take out those axemen because it says they're weak against cav on their unit card, but now I've got so much stuff out here that they are actually paying attention to my flank attack, and their officers and more archers are coming over to help, so we're going to have to not be so aggressive and be careful there. But still, most of their stuff is walking towards our hidden position. Looks like our archers have just become discovered. They're just going to fire down at the enemy as they advance, first prioritising taking out the enemy archers, which happens really quickly, and then their infantry will be the next target, and again they'll go down almost as quickly. However, it's not going to be quite as good as in the previous battles because it's not a night battle anymore. The enemy are probably very disappointed to see I had all these hidden melee units just behind the archers, so they can't charge up and take them out like they may have hoped. We prepare for battle. The enemy are leading with the unit that doesn't have shields, so I'm guessing our archers had a really good time softening them up, and then we'll get that fight started. We do have more melee troops than them actually. The enemy's army is really based around archers. They've got tons of archer units, so the fight starts, but a lot of our men don't have anything to do. They just charge forwards and there's nothing there, and now we're just being hit by arrows. We need our cav to sort things out, but a lot of them are busy at the back trying to not get shot by the enemy's archers. That means some of my heavy spears are being showered by the enemy's arrows. We need to use our officers to take out these archers, and of course that is going to happen, it's just a matter of time. My horse archers charged into melee to take out some of the enemy archers at the back, and my melee cav are stuck fighting an enemy general, but with my own horse archers coming in to support. That will be fine. Meanwhile, the melee didn't last very long because we could just surround the enemy, etc. You know the drill, plus some of our melee cav went in to help as well. Looks like our officers cleared everything up at the back with the various archer units hanging around, and that's going to be the end of that. Another quote-unquote close victory. We lost 200 and something men, the enemy lost like 2,000, I think surely that's decisive enough. It's going to be decisive for this siege, certainly. Plus, we recruit captives to make things a bit better for us. With that, Han Sui is pretty much one auto-resolve away from being defeated, but before that, our ambush plan against Zhang Lu actually works. He starts walking down the road and does get ambushed. The enemy have the advantage though, because our army is just pure trash, so while we have similar numbers to them, our men are very bad. A lot of them don't have any equipment really. It's a little bit risky, I think our officers suck as well, but we are ambushing and that gives you a certain advantage, one would presume, so we will get into this at the start of the next part.